Welcome to the Cardinal Way for Men Live. My name is Ed Cardinal, and getting a little bit later start. We had a little technical difficulties, but here we are, and it's a different format for me. Usually, I'm just talking in front of this camera by myself, but I've decided that I wanted to mix things up a little bit and bring in my friend Ricky Shic, who is a two-time bodybuilding champion, personal trainer. And my demographics for the men that I'm really trying to help are 40 to 60 years old. And obviously, if you look at Ricky, you can tell he's not in those demographics. But something interesting happened yesterday. He had me on as a guest on his podcast. And we had a discussion after about some of the struggles that we both have been dealing with since moving down here to North Carolina. Ricky's originally from Queens, I believe, right?
Yeah, Queens, New York.
Yes, Queens. Moved down from Queens, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got me thinking about the challenges that men 40 to 60 are having are not any different than the challenges that Ricky's having. How old are you, Ricky?
28, gonna be 29.
So
in
he's
2 weeks.
So he's pushing close to 30. I don't want to get him there before his time, but the other thing that I've been really hearing about young men younger than you in their early 20s is that they're really struggling.
Right.
And a lot of it has to do, I believe, of technology. They're spending so much time by themselves at home. They're not socializing. So they're struggling with mental health issues, with health issues. So the topics that I talk about are not just relevant for men 40 to 60. So
Yeah.
So today and tonight I'm going to ask Ricky some questions about his process of being a man and some of his trials, tribulations, how he overcame them, and also how he learned from his life what it means to be a man. And
Yeah.
that'll be the first question to you, Ricky. Did you have specific role models? How did you get an image of what a man should be?
Oh, that's a great question. So like right out of the gate, I had this amazing, my dad is amazing. I love my dad. And he is one of the scariest and nicest human beings on the planet, right? He was like my image of what a man, should be and look like. And I think we had this conversation before about my dad. And, the big thing was like, he's a third degree black belt in Taekwondo. He benches over 300 pounds, right? So he takes care of his body, right? But the biggest thing that I took away as a kid, what was the biggest reflection for me, what I got to saw was I got to see a dad who worked over 3-4 jobs to provide for his family. Mm-hmm. I got to see a warrior train, every single day to keep his body in shape while working, 3-4 jobs to provide for his family. So that was ingrained in me from an early age, like, oh, all men go and take care of their body and train, to be the strongest that they can be. Oh, all men get a job and, provide for their family, And listen, by no stretch of the means was he a perfect dad, but he was an amazing, an awesome dad. So that was like the biggest thing that I got to see, for what a man should be, a provider, a protector. And I make that joke. I used to ask my friends, I'm like, oh, your dad doesn't bench press over 300 pounds? His biceps aren't huge, And it was just like, they're like, no, my dad's an accountant, And I'm just like, oh, well, that's surprising. And listen, there's nothing wrong with accounting, but to the point, like that was my image of what masculinity should be like.
Mm-hmm. What about societal expectations? You had that great role model, your father. What sort of messages were you receiving from society, from the media, from education about what it means to be a man, and how did that influence you in any way, negatively or positively?
I disagree. I was very against the grain growing up, and even now it's just a natural essence to be against the grain. And what the media was teaching me back then, it's more amplified now, but what they did everything in their power to demasculinize a man, right? That it's not okay to have a beard and be strong and be powerful and to have these masculine, attributes. A lot when I was growing up, that was really frowned upon, right? And I believe even nowadays, with all the social media and what the media is putting out, we're doing everything in our power to feminize men and to make them less of what they're supposed to be. Listen, men have feminine qualities to them, 100%, no problem, right? There are females that are more masculine than feminine, right? Mm-hmm. They have qualities like that, but to basically say that your masculine qualities that make you a man are bad, right? Is a terrible thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because they're taking away, what makes us who we are in that aspect. So that's a lot of the, messages that we're getting in society today. It's not okay to take care of your family. No, you go to the gym, you work out. Oh, that's not okay. It's not okay to have testosterone and things like that. So those are the messages that are getting across.
So that's interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up because I thought about that today. That was not something that I had to deal with growing up. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I'm starting to see this. So what would your definition of masculinity be then?
So this is going to surprise you, mm-hmm. and maybe surprise some of your viewers. But to me, the definition of masculinity is the person of Jesus Christ, mm-hmm. of who he was. Because think about it. I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus died and rose for my sins, right? And if you look at the life of Jesus, he died for humanity, right? For everybody's sin. He lived the perfect life and died for everybody. But it goes deeper than that. If you read the Bible, it talks about how he was tough and tender, right? He was tender with women and children, right? He loved women, he loved children, he loved his friends, but he was tough with the Pharisees and the other people who were evil, inherently evil and doing bad things, right? So he dealt with, evil people the way that they're meant to be dealt with, right? Because you're not supposed to be everyone's friend, right? Not everyone has your best interests at heart. And he was the perfect man, as in he dealt with people the way they needed to be dealt with, right? He turned over tables in the temple, right? Out of righteous anger. But he was also soft with his friends, okay. Soft with his family, So this balance, and this is something that I talk about, having that balance of masculinity and then also being in touch with what's considered the feminine traits, which sure. would be tenderness, sensitivity, expressing feelings, being in touch with your feelings and emotions. So it sounds like your definition of masculinity would include that balance between maybe more masculine than feminine, of course, because sure. you're a man, but being comfortable with those so-called feminine traits. Here's a good way to put it, okay? Mm-hmm. So in the Bible, it talks about meekness, right? The word meek, mm-hmm. right? And a lot of people think that the word meek means weak. It doesn't. The original translation is power under control, right? A man who has control over his emotions, right? Doesn't mean we can't be emotional, right? I get sad, I get angry, right? We experience these emotions, but to have power under control, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to be a man and to be able to control that under pressure, right? Or to any kind of life circumstances. So that gives me the capacity to be vulnerable with my wife, to be vulnerable with the appropriate people, right? To be strong when I need to be strong, right? Power under control, because that's what a man is. Somebody who's not meek, right, is somebody who is not in control of their emotions, who lashes out at their wife, right? Lashes out at their friends. And that's where you get this toxic masculinity from, mm-hmm.
Has there been a time in your life where you struggled as a man, and how did you overcome it?
So I want to say and I don't want to say it's pretty recent actually, because I recently got married, right? Mm-hmm. And I really feel like that's where my masculinity got put to the test, right? We traveled from New York, we moved down here to North Carolina after we got married, and I was all set up to get a job, right? And I thought this is what I wanted to be. I thought I wanted to be, an occupational therapist, whatnot, and it wound up just not working out, right? So now I don't have a job, right? And I have to basically provide for my family. So that was the biggest pressure for me was, okay, Now I need to be a man and provide for the family, right? And to do everything I can to protect my wife and still being a loving husband. So that was one of the biggest challenges for me. But what came out of that challenge was this: the fact that I said, okay, I am going to do the best that I can to provide for my family. And what that wound up happening is I wound up starting my own business, right? And now that is taking care of my family. So that pressure was able to make me into a diamond and help, my family. So that was one of the biggest struggles, being able to say, hey, I have to protect my wife and provide for my family. So as a man, that was one of the biggest times in my life, and it was pretty recent.
Mm-hmm. You and I have had conversations before, and this is something that really I admired about you.
Thank you.
You talked about wanted to be a better man, wanted to be a better husband, and you did some things to help you in that process. I think you said you read some books.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the books that you read?
Oh, man, I read a lot of books. I had to read. I think one of the biggest things that a man needs to do is always improve himself, always get better. And talking about that, that crisis I was in, how am I going to financially provide for my family? I read a book called Simple Money, Rich Life, and it's basically a finance book. It's a biblical finance book taking biblical principles and teaching you how to use your finances, right, to not only make money and live a good life, but how can I use that to also give back, right? And to say that, hey, these stereotypes that the world has about finances, that's not how it is, right? So I read that Simple Money, Rich Life, and that was one of the best books that I read, that helped me, with my finances in that time of struggle,
How about being a better husband? Was there?
Yeah, so that there was a couple. Then now I understand. Okay, so there was a lot of books like that. I read a beautiful communication book, and it was called Communication: the Key to Your Marriage. Right? And listen, if you think you can communicate with people when you just get married, I'm sorry, you do not know what you're talking about. Because I thought I knew. And my whole job is about communicating, and I knew nothing, right? So I'm reading this book, and it's basically explaining how men and women communicate differently,
Absolutely.
right? I am who, like cavemen, very simple-minded, right? But but I think we talked about this on our podcast, that women have 40% more connective tissue in their brain, so they're in the right and the left brain at the same time when they're communicating, right? So that's how women can also be emotional and logical at the same time. Right. Men are either in the left brain or the right brain. So if you don't know and learn how to communicate, which this book taught me how to do, right, you're going to get a lot of clashing, right? Because you're going to be in one space and she's going to be in another space. So that was a good book that I read. There was another book called That's Just How It Is. It's a marriage book, basically saying, what'd you expect, right? This is marriage, and you two are two completely different people, and you're going to learn how to communicate. And the best part is, it taught me that vulnerability is so important, especially as a man, because that's not our first instinct.
No, and it's not something that we're taught to be. It's actually taught that it's a sign of weakness,
right?
Abilities, and actually, I believe it's a sign of strength and courage to be able to be vulnerable.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed. Totally agree. Yeah. That's what makes you a man. The fact that I can face these insecurities head on and go to war with them. I think that's I think being vulnerable is one of the most masculine things you can do. Couldn't agree with you more on that. Yeah.
So if you were to give advice or some insights to young men or all men about navigating their own paths and understanding what it means to be a man, what advice would you give them?
You got two choices in life. You have two choices in life, and both require some sort of suffering, right? Now, you're going to face trials, you're going to face wars. Every man's going to fight a war. Right? And you can either embrace that war, because we're wired that way. We're wired to conquer and to win, right? We're men. That's how we're wired to do. Now you have two choices. You can either take these trials that are coming your way, right, and use them to make you stronger, right, to overcome these, these insecurities that you're going to wind up facing in these wars, man, because they're going to reveal your character. And you can use it to build integrity, character, perseverance, and patience, right, to become a better man. Or You can sit on your couch, point the finger, blame everybody else, and get nowhere in life. And I know that's a little harsh, but that's true, right? And suffer that way. So pick. That's what I would say. Be open to embracing a war. It is okay to be a man. Your masculine qualities are very, very good. Remember to be meek. Power under control. That's what I would say.
Awesome response to that question.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Ricky, if someone wanted to reach out to you to talk about health,
Yes.
physical health, strength training, how could they do so? I know you have social media platforms. You're very active.
Yes.
And he's interviewed me a couple times now for his podcast. He has a podcast show. So how would people contact you, and how could they get in touch with you?
So the best way to contact me, you can contact me at Ricky_Shic_fitness_4_you at Instagram.com. Right? I believe that. Yeah, at Instagram. And you can also reach me on the Fitness for You telephone line at 845-642-4006. That's 845-642-4006. Send a text and let's chat.
And then I can also post this in the comments. I'll post that contact information for Ricky.
Absolutely.
Well, Ricky, I want to thank you. Appreciate the candid discussion on modern day masculinity. And if you enjoyed this process and this new format that I want to sprinkle into my weekly Facebook Lives, drop the word yes down in the comments. And until you see me again, be well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.